closed. And so these are all old newspaper articles of where that was done, and it's just sort of an interesting thing that if you're visiting, you probably didn't know that, and you just can look at it on the sign and get some quick information. Here's another one. The Wabash River hosts a diverse fish population. We'll be using AccuBurn to make these so they can cut any shape for us, and these will actually pop off of the sign, so there'll be metal signs with photo steel technology, meaning they don't fade like a lot of the signs do. And then we have the ability to put a spacer in there so that the logo and anything that pops off of it stick out. So it just kind of makes them look really nice. We try to make the signage in big batches because of how the metal comes in. It usually comes in on 5 foot by 20 foot pieces. So it's best to have all your signs ready. And so we'll kind of do a big, install of signs. But as we get closer, like for example, we have one that's been made about the, what's it called? Back home again in Indiana. And so, maybe that would be a good one for here since that's the name of the bridge named after the music. Yes. So, the kids did all the research on the pictures of what it looks like, then even came up with ideas about it would be cool if there was like a xylophone attached to it with the notes so that you can play part of the chorus while you're looking at the Wabash while you're there at the bridge. So some creative ideas that they've come up with, and we like the fact that we were working with high school students and giving them, experience with real life skills. It's an Ivy Tech dual credit class, so the Ivy Tech professors actually came and got to watch the kids working on designing those signs. So just a cool way to engage like more of an audience, I guess. So we've tried to make sure that all of the different points of interest are listed on the Google map. A lot of things aren't listed on the Google map, so whenever we could, we would make the request to Google to get names added to the map. So we probably added at least 20 sites across the 3 counties that weren't properly labeled. And I still get messages about like your information has now been viewed 30,000 times or whatever. So just small things like that you don't think about when you live here and you know where something is. That if people, we're not doing this project to try to create a lot of regional tourism. We're trying to make something nice for the people who live here. But if visitors are interested, then we want to make sure that not only do visitors know how to get places, but also the people who live here and we're always shocked by people saying, I didn't know where that was, or I've never been there before. And that happens pretty regularly, that people that live in Warren County that I'm talking to about something, whether it's a Niches Land Trust property or an access point, like have no idea where it is. So that's the second part. Does anybody have any questions about wayfinding or sign?
Yeah, a couple, I guess. So if we wanted to ask that something would be added to a Google map, we'd ask you?
Oh, you can do it yourself. It's just knowing the process. But yeah, you basically, you go to the map, Google Map, and you right click on it, and there's like a thing that says like, do you think there's missing information? And then you click on that and you kind of give them suggestions. And then I think for us, like because we've done it so many times, like it doesn't take as many days for them to vet it to make sure that we're not making something up. Because the last one, I just did one last week and it only took 2 days to go live on Google.
So like our launch right now would not be listed?
It probably is. I don't know what it says. See, I don't look because I know where it is, but let's see what it says. Oh yeah, it says Attica Public Access Site. Okay. So it's already listed.
And that's municipal, not DNR, or is that DNR?
It is a DNR site. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't have to say DNR site or otherwise. It just says public access, so everybody knows that means like I can go there.
So I saw a DNR sign down there and it's really shot.
Mm-hmm.
And how do we get a new one?
Yeah, it's a good question. The DNR has so many sites that they take care of across the state. We've noticed that it's the same sign everywhere. It's a standard sign. And we've noticed that many, many sites, it's almost so faded that you can't read it. We have a pretty good relationship. It's kind of unfortunate in some ways, but beneficial in other ways. Like the state has a northern half of the state, boots on the ground guy, and a southern half. And half of our grant region is West, and half of our grant region is Luke. So Luke is the southern part. So Covington is his furthest north that he goes, and he covers everything in the southern half of the state. West is your person. So I would need to contact Wes and say, hey, the Attica sign is really bad. What are we gonna do about that? Now, they might have extras of those and they might say, okay, like when we're close, we'll bring one. Or we might say, hey, if you give us a PDF, we can just go ahead and make one when we're making ours, because we know ours won't fade. And theirs, however they've made theirs, maybe they're really old, but like the process that they use to make our signs don't fade, so then you'd be good to go for ever. So I'll write that down.
Yeah, thanks. And as far as the other signage you were talking about, if we have ideas of something we'd like to have, like in Wabachi Park, we would ask you about that, or we'd apply for a grant?
Yeah, you could say if there was something of local interest that you wanted there to be a sign for. If it's within whatever your guys' lease is with the DNR, then the DNR has to approve it. But if it's, that whole park is a town park, only a small part is a DNR lease. So if it's somewhere that's not part of the DNR lease, then the people in this room would be able to approve it. And if it's on the DNR part close to the launch, then the DNR would have to step in and approve it too. But yeah, if there was something that you guys wanted, we probably wouldn't, at this point, the school year's almost over with that group of students, but we have a person that works for us that, knows what these looks like and could keep a similar theme across all of them and would be able to create something that you guys would be able to say, like, change this, change that, whatever.
So, like, we have an overlook right now that nobody knows, well, very few people know exists. And I being one of them until just a few days ago. And having signage that would direct people to the overlook and then to give them history about the overlook, would that be something you're talking about?
Yeah. Yep. So do I just keep walking that way at the park and go under the bridge and then it's that way, or is it something totally different?
If you go to C&D and just south of C&D, there's a raised, looks like a grassy alley.
Okay.
And you had a football field west toward the river, and there's the overlook.
Okay. So yeah, I think I would be curious too, is like what your long-term plans were. I heard about that before, that's why I kind of knew in general where it was, but I sort of went under the bridge and then kept walking, and I was like, I don't know if I'm in the right
If you
spot.
went under the bridge and you looked up to your right, you can see it from down.
Okay. All right,
Yeah.
so yeah, so that would be something that if you guys wanted it to not be a grassy alley and wanted to like maintain that and draw people to that, then, like signage to get to that point would be something we could do.
Well, and then we're talking about getting a trail that goes the whole length from Armswood down to Wabachi. And so some of that trail exists really almost to downtown. But then there would need to be signage to get people kind of weave through downtown up 2 or 3 blocks and down through the loop and then over to Wabachi. So signage for that. The point is to get them to the river. So would that qualify?
Yes, maybe, but if not, depending on how big the tricky part about signage is just like the permissions and then what you want. So like if you had something that, I'm just thinking about other places that I've seen, like it's either a certain shape, something small that like connects to existing poles that are already there, instead of having to like install all the new poles and then get, the locates and get the permissions. If we can just add to an existing sign, that's super cheap, and that's something that we probably wouldn't have any problem doing. And you could have the sign be any shape that you want, so like maybe there's a shape that makes sense or whatever, so that they all look the same, and then people would know from wherever it starts on one end, I'm looking for that shape or that color or that whatever to get them the rest of the way. But AccuBurn, right there in Williamsport too, we do all of our signs with, and they're not really that expensive compared to when you talk to like some other companies about signs. So probably what you're talking about, depending on how many of them there are, we might be able to do for like less than $1,500, which is pretty small.
And then we would ask you about that, or we just.
Yeah, I think that you would want to like set up some meetings specifically to talk about it, so like we can find out what you want. Maybe you guys have somebody that you work with that would do the graphic design for you for free, but if not, we would want to say, what do you want it to look like? And then we would come back with email you a design, and you say, no, I don't like that, like change it to this, change it to that. And then and we get them cut and get them printed, and then you guys would get them installed. So yeah, I think that's the important part about having partnerships and teams is then like we only have a certain capacity. So for us, like you don't want me out there installing the sign, but like, otherwise it's just volunteers that volunteer for the foundation. So you would use like your town workers or, you know, somebody that has that skill set in your community to install them. You would tell us where you want the holes in the sign based on where you're gonna put them. Like, well, this one's gonna be on a sign that, you know, we need 2 holes that are like this, or this one's gonna be on a sign where we need 2 holes 4 inches apart like that. But then we would give them to you and then you would install, you know, somebody that you know would install them.
Okay.
So the largest is, and if anybody has to leave, like, it will not hurt my feelings at all. If you're like, oh my God, this is like watching paint dry. Like, you can leave and like, I won't feel bad. So I want to answer your questions as much as possible and give you as much detail as possible, but I also don't want to bore you to death either. So new launches and improvements to existing launches. So I just had a meeting with Lily today at 3:30. We have reports that are about 10 to 15 pages long, due to them every 6 months, and then they meet with us on Zoom for an hour in the 3 month time in between. So they're hearing from us 4 times a year, twice by words and twice by writing. And so, you know, he was asking today, the program manager was asking us about how, like, our ratio of how many improvements have we made to existing launches to this point in the first 16 months versus how many new launches have we made. And I know that there's some interest in potentially a floating dock. Well, we've spent more money currently on new launches than improvements to existing launches, just because the improvements to existing launches, we're kind of waiting for people to come to us and say, hey, we'd like to do X, Y, or Z, rather than us going out and looking for those things and then having an opportunity a year from now that arises when somebody says, I'm a willing landowner for a new access site that will make a current, 15-mile distance, which is too far, split somewhat in half. And if we spent all of our money on improvements to existing launches, then we don't have anything left for new launches. But we've been a partial funder for floating dock in Montezuma and one that's yet to be installed in Clinton. Talking about those partnerships, they did all the work on those ends. Like, we didn't do any of the work except giving part of the money. And that worked out really well for us because, there's lots of parts of this grant, but this is just one grant of I have 120 funds, and Western Indiana Community Foundation is more like 400 funds that we're also managing, and scholarships and other, commitments. So they did all the legwork, and then they just asked us to be a funder sort of at the end. So I don't have that much knowledge about them because when we first found out we got the grant, I had meetings with 3 different floating dock companies just to kind of find out how it worked and if they'd worked with the DNR before and if that was allowed and things like that. But then once I realized that was a possibility, it's like, okay, well, that would probably be an improvement to existing launch. So let's keep working on finding new spots to build new launches, and then as people are wanting floating launches, that's kind of come to us. So I think, when I was talking to Jerry on the phone, I think you guys have potential for a floating dock if you wanted, if it made sense. Like, I drove down on Friday night checking out the area because we were having an event on Saturday at the river, and there were 3 people fishing from the shore, and it's pretty far down to the water in certain spots. And so, if and only if a floating dock is something that makes sense for you. Because for me, when I kayak, and I kayak regularly from Attica to Williamsport, that's a very short 40-minute family-friendly route that I can do in the evening after a long day's work. See if the bald eagle's in its nest halfway down, peaceful. And I just go to the left-hand side of the launch. The problem with the cement launch for a kayaker is you can get in on those, but you either have to be okay with the bottom of your kayak getting scratched because you set it on the cement and then you scoot your butt to help you get in, or you put it on the slimy part because beneath the water line it starts to have a lot of algae growing and then it's really slippery. So now your boat's in the water and it's floating, but when you step in, you have to make sure that your leg's still on the cement and not in the water because it's pretty slippery. So most people, I've seen people get in their kayaks just off of the cement launch, but for me, I just take it over to the left in the rocks and get in there. And there's already a cement something or other right there. I don't know what that used to be at some point in time, but that is a potential location for a floating dock probably. That's probably the easiest spot, but if it's not the spot that you guys like, then you would wanna work it out. And the reason why I say it's the easiest, it has the lowest natural, like, as you go further this way from the launch, you get further and further from the water. So on that side of the launch, the water's pretty much right there, and so I don't know how expensive the arms were at Montezuma that flex. So basically you have arms that are connected back into the land, and then there's arms that go down when the water's low, go up when the water's high, so that no matter what your water level is, your floating dock is always floating. So your groups that are working on the river, you know, I know that when I came like a year ago to talk to you, you like were interested in things like erosion control. You have an amphitheater potential project, and while we think those are like important and compelling projects, when Lily's talking to us, they're asking us what improvements have you made to launches and what new launches have you built. Like, so I have to be able to say like this is helping somebody get into the water. So a floating dock, you depending on which company you went with, they have like different attachments to them, and so one of the attachments are like benches, and so some of the like the Montezuma one I think has at least one bench on it. So it's for kayakers to get in the water, but it also has a bench that someone can sit on and be closer to the water, sort of floating, looking out at the water, and even fishing from it. So we don't have any like, it doesn't matter to us, like we're not trying to force upon you like Attica needs a floating launch, but if it's something that you're like, oh, that makes a lot of sense, and there's a group of people who's interested in tackling it and figuring out a spot and, you know, meeting with the company, then I think that's great, and we can kind of, you know, get a price and see what that means. The other two, I don't know if you guys have ever done a patronicity. Have you guys ever done a patronicity one-to-one match through the IHCDA? Okay, so Indiana Housing and Community Development Authority, you can apply for a one-to-one match, and they use the crowdfunding platform called Patronicity. So the coffee shop project in Warren County, that's how we got a $50,000 grant. Like we had to raise $50,000, and if we raised $50,000, then we got $50,000 from the IHCDA. So that's what both Montezuma and Clinton did. Both of them created Patronicity crowdfunding because they knew they had this group over here and this group over here, you know, this Rotary Club and this Lions Club and this business and this Park and Rec group and this town that all had money to contribute to it. So they knew they were going to get them, they could raise the money, and then they just knew that the money from the IHCDA was like gravy on top. The secret to that funding platform is the applicant can't get a match on their money. So you want to choose whichever entity from your group doesn't have any money to give, and it has to be either a government group or a 501c3. That's who you have be the applicant, because their money's not going to get matched, and then anybody else that gives money is going to get a match. You can only be, we could only be, if you were using that platform because you thought that there was some other money out there, one funder can only be 35%. So like, you know, like, okay, it's $100,000 project, so okay, Blue Way give us 50,000 and then we'll get 50,000. Like, we can't do that, but it helps stretch the money further. I'm not saying that you have to do it that way. I'm just saying if you have a project someday, I think 10,000 is the minimum, all the way up to 50,000. So if you need 20,000, you do a $10,000 patronicity, get a $10,000 match. And you can go on their website, patronicity.com, and you can look at the different projects that are going on around the state right now and how many days they have left in their fundraising and how many people have contributed. And you can also see the ones that are closed. So I look on that just because it gives me ideas of cool projects sometimes, but something for you to check out and think about for a project, not necessarily a floating dock, but just if you're working on something. Like if you get close to your amphitheater and you're like $100,000 short, whoever has the least money be the applicant, try to get 50,000 from the IHCDA and then 50,000 from crowdfunding.
What was the name of that site?
Patronicity, Patronicity. Has kind of a logo. So that's just a good tidbit for any project that you,
Michelle, like on these floating docks, does the municipality end up taking on the maintenance and care of those? I would assume like the one down at Montezuma.
yeah.
Those have to come out in the winter and go back in the summer. So there's a little bit of maintenance.
Yep, I think, Clinton was going to hire out the taking in and putting, and that's, so they got the money in the fall, but they decided not to put it in until this year because whoever they've contracted with to do it is apparently gonna charge them $1,000 each time. But one of the things with those floating docks that you can get as an attachment in the beginning is wheels for the bottom. And so then you literally just hook it up to any piece of town equipment and just pull it out on the wheels. And I've seen, not very many places, but I did see when I went to look at those 103 launches, I saw a few sites where they had just pulled it up and left it on site, just somewhere that was outside of the flood zone. They weren't worried about somebody hooking up to it and stealing it, so they didn't have to store it inside somewhere or something like that. They were just getting it out of like the potential risk of being hit by something in the flood. So yeah, from that standpoint, that is a good thing to point out that like, even though we could potentially be the sole funder, I'm just one of the community foundation directors. Taylor Powell, is the other one now that Dale's retired. So like we all have to be in agreement on projects. But if it was a project, then like, yeah, it would be like, we would be gifting it to the city of Attica. And, if you take good care of it, then it lasts for 20 years. And if you don't, it lasts for 3 or 4 and, it is what it is. So,
Michelle?
Yeah.
Is this dock also for, if you put that by the landing site, is that also for boaters to access so they could, dock their boat, passengers can get on and they take off?
yeah, I think that's a
or
good
not?
question. I think on the website, it shows all different kinds of things. Like they even have ones that are specific for jet skis to pull out all the way up onto and things like that. But I do know what you're backing your trailer up and you're gotta wait for the person who's gonna go park the truck. Where do you sort of hover your boat while you're doing that? It makes sense that you'd be able to kind of carefully pull over and use the little bumper guard on your boat and kind of hover there waiting. I think it also depends on how deep the water is just right off of there. Can whatever size the boat is get over to that side? But that would be definitely something that if that was something that would be important, that when you met with different floating dock companies, you would want to say like, here's all the different ways we might want to use it. It's not just for fishermen, it's not just for kayakers, it's also for this, and this. And then maybe they have something in mind for that.
The one, Logan Sport, that's what they're looking at doing, to have that boat dock.
Seems like it'd be pretty.
Yeah, it's just like another attachment on maybe.
Yeah, they basically like click together. It's sort of like plug and play. So you tell them what you want, and then depending on what you want, all these different pieces sort of connect together with different fittings. And so you can have any layout that you want or any configuration with whatever, obviously each special doodad that you add, increases the cost, but that's kind of how they price it out. And it's not very easy on any of the websites to get an instant price. It's always like, tell it what you want, and then you got to do a quote and all this stuff. But the salespeople that I've talked to on the phone have been very good about sending additional materials or things like that if it's requested. So,
Do you know, or can you disclose what the cost was for Montezuma?
I think they did a 1-to-1 match at $30,000, so I think it was around a $60,000 project. Let's see, something like that. Yeah, I think Clinton's might have been a little bit more. You can type them in still, even though those projects aren't live anymore. So yeah, Montezuma. They raised $33,000 and got a $25,000 match. So that $58,000, from my understanding, was enough to cover the whole cost. The Clinton one, it was called Riverside Park. They asked for a $32,500 match and they raised $33,000. So theirs was probably a $65,000 project. But I've given Jerry both of those entities' contact information. I don't think there's any reason why they wouldn't share with you like who they used as their person or, you know, what they already have learned to this point with Montezuma already. I think Montezuma was adding extender arms because the water got so low that the dock was almost sitting like on just bare ground, and so they wanted to have an extender so it could be a little bit further out. But you know, that was kind of something that they added later when they didn't realize that the water was going to be so low for so long.
See, that's why I'd be worried with the dock is that, because our river goes down so low in the summer. The
Yeah.
only time it's really high is like in spring.
Mm-hmm. I think that's, you know, these companies that work with, they work with lakes and streams and ponds and whatever, but they also work with rivers. So they're aware that you're going to have fluctuation, and that's why there's a few different things. Like the first one that I saw that had the arms was South Bend's rowing team. So they're on the St. Joseph River, and it was the first one that I saw that had the pivoting arms. One of the ones that I went to, it was floating, but it had like really, really long poles that went up. It wasn't really very aesthetically pleasing. I had like these C clamps basically, and then it could go up the pole or down the pole, but then you always had poles sticking up like 10 feet above it. So then some people have decided to do it that way. It just depends on, you know, the people that do those are the experts, and they can kind of say, you know, this is probably what works best at your location. And that's why you need somebody that really wants something here, because like who's going to be the contact person? Like it shouldn't be us, because we don't have the true skin in the game of being the people who live here, who are going to use it, who have to answer to the local people. Like we just, you know, give you a check and are on our way. So you would want to make sure it's exactly what you want if you're going to get something.
Now, if we were to get a floating dock, would we go through you, or we'd have to go through Western Indiana Community Foundation, correct?
It's not a normal, like it's not part of our normal grant making process. So you could contact either of us and say, hey, we're interested in it. And it's not a grant application like if you're applying for something through the community foundation. It's like we have to assess, like, does this meet what Lily is telling us that we have to do? Does it fit in our budget with what we're supposed to accomplish across this, that sort of thing. That's why it was nice for us on those other ones that had partial funding from some other, like they wanted it, they knew they had part of the money for it, and then we could just kind of come in and give, you know, 20,000 at the end or something like that. I'm not saying we can't do more than that. I'm just saying with those other two projects, that's about how much we gave, somewhere around in there, 15 to 20. But we have the capacity potentially to do more. It would just be like determining, is it something that you guys even want? Or is it just like that's the thing about grants. Like you don't want something like, oh, well, there's maybe some free money for this. But like if you don't want it at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if there's free money. You know, like it has to be something that makes sense and that you believe that you can maintain and you believe that people will use. You know, I see a lot of people eating their lunch down there. Like, so maybe people would sit on the bench on the floating dock and eat their lunch, but maybe they won't. Maybe they'll still sit in their car and eat, and then you just assume that they would want to sit outside and they actually don't. So, you know, you really want, on any project, you really want to make sure that your public actually wants it.
Myself personally, I think it'd be very beneficial to that area. I mean, we have a lot of foot traffic down there, again, like you said, people eat lunches, so forth. A lot of people go fishing down there. So, you know, there's another point. And I mean, we got a lot of people that come in here for Badlands. I mean, over 100,000 people a year.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've seen some of them down there just kind of checking things out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think we have a lot of opportunities down there.
Been a lot of campers down there.
Yeah.
And plus, I don't know if you noticed or not, but the park and the city added a new park, or new playground equipment down
It's
there.
very nice.
So that's adding more people down there, and
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of things. I mean, I think that, or, you know, doing something down there, making that improvements, we have that opportunity through
Yeah.
this. And as I said from the start, I'm excited about the fact that it was 5-6 years ago when Dale started talking about this,
Mm-hmm.
and, you know, it started coming. That's something I think a lot of people don't understand, is how long it takes.
Yeah,
It's not
things
like,
take a long time.
you know, it's not like, oh, here's a check. It's took this long for that to happen.
We live in a world of instant gratification, and this is not what we have going on.
Now,
Grants.
I heard, and I don't know how true it is, but you guys was looking at doing another launch up along the Wabash on this side of Riverside. Is that coming to?
Well, if anybody has a good relationship with the Fountain County Commissioners, we could use positive words. I've presented twice in front of them. After the first meeting, they wanted to know what their liability exposure was. They wanted to know what Duke Energy thought about us using the utility easement that's there. And they wanted to know some things that the DNR thought about the site. And so we were able to go back 2 weeks later. We'd already met with Duke and had gotten permission to potentially go alongside their utility poles. DNR had Wes, who's our guy, plus 3 fish and wildlife biologists who commented. Basically, there was some concern that was like too deep of a channel and too fast of moving water and potentially dangerous. But from the DNR standpoint, it's not wide enough to be a DNR launch because DNR has a goal of having a launch every 10 river miles, which is because of people with motorized boats. But for hand carry paddle, your goal is 5 miles. So we're trying, like right now, there's a lot of stretches that don't even meet the DNR's goal. But they have so many launches they're taking care of, they're not actively seeking new sites. So like right now, I think the distance between Granville Bridge and Attica is about 16 river miles. That's really far. You have to have perfect flow and no wind pushing against you to make that doable. On a good flow day, I can make it from Independence to Attica in about 2.5 hours if there's not wind pushing against me. But that's only like 8 miles. So yes, the Fountain County Commissioners own the parcel to the southwest of the bridge. And we already got an estimate for a launch on the northeast side of the bridge, and the estimate was $1.6 million. So we said, thank you, but no thank you. Where can we have a spot that makes sense? So we had the DNR come on site, and they said it's not wide enough for a full-fledged DNR launch, but we would fully support it as a hand-carry paddle launch. Mrs. Land Trust then came alongside and said, this is only 4 miles from our stewardship facility. We would be happy to have a lease on that to maintain it. So,
Is that where the old beach used to be? Did they used to
That's
call
on
that
down, that's on down, about halfway down between Attica and.
Riverside? Okay.
So yes, so long story short, yes, and that would be a more reasonable launch for us because as proposed, it would be a stone drive parallel to the utility poles. We wouldn't have to cut down any trees, so we wouldn't have to pay any penalties for DNR mitigation along a floodway. And we would just have a stone drive at the end. And even the DNR themselves said you don't even need cement to the water. It's already a shallow slope with sand and rock. So like people are ready to go right then. So we're optimistic about that. When I went back the second time, they said what makes it the launch. I said potentially willing landowner. Trees are already cut down. Duke Energy's okay with it, presumably. I mean, we have some hoops to jump through with them, but you know, you've got somebody who's willing to take on the maintenance lease. Like the end, right? But they first wanted a letter from an engineering firm saying it was a good spot. And that letter could cost us, depending on which engineering company, somewhere between $2,000 and $20,000. So we think we've talked them off of that, and maybe if Wes will write a letter that says, I think this is a good spot, then we'll be able to have that.
If you get the blessing from DNR, I mean, they're the hope of the waterways.
Yeah, so we've already had several email correspondences, on site with his words. He said, I think this is a good spot. He said that he would even help draw the plan that we submit for the DNR permit so that we wouldn't have to pay as many engineering fees. And so, yes, and that would make Attica the perfect takeout spot. People will start in Riverside, get out in Attica, and that's what we're going for. That's a perfect distance. It's a good stretch. It's nice. So yes, that has been presented at the last 2 commissioners meetings. It's supposed to go back May 4th with if we get something from an engineering firm or from the DNR before then. So the Duke Energy would like us to stay 25 feet from their poles. I'm gonna have to go out with a measuring tape and see if we have room in all those spots. They said, like, if we could show that we had less room than that, but if the lineman still felt like it was okay, like, maybe we could do less.
A lot of work.
Yes, a lot of moving pieces and logistics for all of these. So the new launches, so we partnered with DNR to do a launch on the Big Vermilion called the Sonamon. It's towards Forest Glen. It's on the Indiana side, but if you know Forest Glen Preserve, it's right there. It's 5 river miles to Eugene. A landowner liked what we were doing at Sonamon, said, I'll give you an acre. So right there, so it's the Eugene Covered Bridge, and then the county road and Eugene Covered Bridge restaurants on the opposite side. So this is gonna be on the east side of the county bridge. And the driveway will just parallel that county bridge, and then we got that acre given to us for that, and that's, hopefully it'll be done within the next 2 weeks. The ground prep work has been done, but then we got, 3 inches of rain, so that contractor's kind of waiting. So that's the second new launch, and then, we will start May 4th at Morse Hill Road on Big Pine Creek, and Attica will be the get out point for that. So you can either start at the Niches Land Trust property, Fall Creek Gorge, potholes, and go about 10 miles, 9 miles to get out in Attica, or you could go half that distance and get out at Morse Hill, or you can go from Morse Hill Road to Attica. So lots of, all points into Attica with kind of some of the routes that we're making, or starting in Attica and go up the short family friendly route to Williamsport. So 3 launches already, the DNR permitting process is very long. So we were lucky on the Sonamon one that it was already sort of a partnership with DNR. And then the new director of DNR used to be the representative for Vermilion County. So we were able to kind of speed that one up a little bit. But between the Army Corps of Engineers and DNR, we were a little bit over 6 months with Morse Hill Road on just the waiting and the answering questions and the whatever.
Have you begun work on those?
The trees have been cleared off of Morse Hill Road, and the contractor will start on May 4th. We're waiting on a culvert pipe to come from.
So how many total launches on Pine Creek are you working on?
That's the only new launch.
Just the one.
We're working with Niches to see if we can make the parking a little bit better at potholes. But even though that's a Niches property, it was a Nature Conservancy property before that. So even though it was deeded to Niches, they still have to follow all the Nature Conservancy rules. So anytime they want to do anything, they still have to get the DNR's permission. So we think that we can get 5 better parking spots there.
Is that basically parking for down to the bridges, or?
So
Or is there
right
something
now
else?
at Twin Bridges, where we did the new mural project, people are just parking on the side of the road there. And so we want to have better signage and more stone to make like 6
Is there
distinct
better
spots.
access down to the creek there?
There's a spot, so what we've asked Niches to look into is if we can do some 6x6s with rebar, because the DNR doesn't want permanent structures on a Nature Conservancy property. So if we were to use cement or things like that, that's more permanent. But if we can sort of make earthen steps by using 6x6s and backfilling them and anchoring them with rebar, you technically could pry those up and get rid of them and not have the debris of cement and stuff left over if we ever needed to. So that would make it a little bit better. Right now, it's just a trail that goes down, and we think that doing that 6x6 method or 4x4s with pretty long pieces of rebar would be helpful for people. And then the 450 bridge is already considered a right-of-way access, so there's already a parking lot there with a sandy access. So we've done some brush clearing there just to make it more obvious where the spot is and got rid of a lot of poison ivy, but we haven't needed to inject a lot of money into that site because it's currently serving its purpose. Like there could be at least 6 or 7 cars that park there without a problem. So our goal is to create 5-mile sections, and then a person has a choice of doing 5 miles, 10 miles, or this 5 mile or that 5 mile. And so we've accomplished that so far on the Vermilion and then on the Big Pine once these 2 launches are done. Contractor thinks 2 to 3 weeks once they start May 4th, but everything that we do always takes longer than we think, so I would say, let's say 6 weeks. So that should mean that by mid-June, that side's open, if everything goes right.
And so for us to publicize, for people to know where those are, we could just say, you could search on Google under what?
Yeah, so, so like that was one of the things that we just added to Google actually. It says 450 Bridge, Big Pine access. You know, it's a right of way access. It's not a approved DNR launch. It's technically like, county highways need to maintain their bridges type of thing, but there's a parking lot and there's a sandy access to the water. So, but we're also working on a website. So it's wabashriverblueway.org. And we're starting to put all the segments on there. So you can scan that QR code. It says the website's still under construction, and it definitely is. But eventually, under the access points tab, you'll be able to click by body of water. And then each segment is listed with how far it is. And then you'll be able to bore down even further and get more details about it.
And this is something we could go ahead and add to our webpage too.
Oh yeah, you can put a link to the Blue Way website for sure, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, well, I've been droning on for 48 minutes now. There's 3 more pieces, but I'll be really brief on them and then I'll just let you ask questions. There's an arts and culture, we have $200,000 for that. Murals, so we've completed 5 murals and have 2 sculptures. Murals on state highway bridges are more complex because there's like a 20-page application through the state highway department. So we've been currently only going on county bridges. I think, maybe your bridge here in Attica would be a consideration. So whoever your people are that would approve something like that and decide what you want that to be. And then we would go through the long process of the permit from the state. Possibly if that Riverside becomes a launch, then that bridge is a county-owned bridge. Fountain County owns that bridge, so we would ask permission to do something on that. So that people can either see it from the water, or if you aren't a boater, then you can drive down and see it from the parking lot. So $100,000 for murals, which sounds like a lot, but depending on the mural, the 2 in Vermilion County were about $10,000 each, so they're really well done, but they cost a lot of money. Events and festival promotions. So we have $4,000 per county per year to give towards promoting events. So like last year, they gave some sort of. So I can only control that $4,000 for Warren County, and Western Indiana Community Foundation controls the $8,000 that Fountain and Vermilion get. But to sponsor events that pertain to the river or near the river or about the river. And then also in that category is the digital passports. And so this is something we really want to start pushing. They're done. There's a QR code that links to them. It's on the website already. We have outdoor recreation, things to do, arts and culture, and food and drink. Families can sign up for free for the pass. And then it's geo-fenced. So when they get their phone within a certain region, it gives them credit for the site and they earn points. And then they can turn their points in to submit them for a drawing for gift cards to local places. So it's a free family activity that helps point out places. Well, I shouldn't say it's free to do, but like the things to do, some of the places and the things to do would cost money. Like pinball on Perry, like you get credit for being there. You don't have to actually play a game, but if you want to use it, then you're gonna have to pay. But the outdoor recreation, all of those are free parks. We try to put all the parks on niches. We only put the parks that they gave us permission for. They didn't want to overrun certain parks, so we worked with them to see which ones they're okay with being on there. But there's between those 4 passes, there's like over 145 places that families can go within those different categories. The arts and culture is murals and historic points of interest. So that all goes in the arts and culture part of our grant. And then the education component and youth programming. So we have every K through 6 teacher across all 3 counties got a tote bag that had lesson plans and books and supplies for that pertain specifically to their grade level. So it's linked to Indiana state standards. And then they got a flash drive that had all the grade levels plus a bunch of other activities They can be used across many age levels, and there's already started to be teachers using those. And then, I only made a few copies of this, but you can kind of pass them around, I guess, and look at both sides. Tracks and scat, kids are really interested in those things. So we bought one set for each county to check out from our offices. So we have a second grade class that's gonna do a park ranger day coming up, and so they're using the resources within their own kit. We gave each school 36 mini microscopes. They're hard to describe, but they're really pretty impressive. They do 20 times zoom, have a light on them, so like you can put it up to a tree and like see moss at 20x, which is pretty neat. And so trying to bring the river into the curriculum, but then we offered a teacher training, and anybody could come to it, soil and water conservation, librarians, whatever. The Covington librarian came and got really fired up about it and said, well, kids are gonna be learning about this at school. We wanna have something that people can check out from the library. So she created 5 different kits that families can check out, and then talked to all 7 other libraries. And so all 8 libraries in the 3 counties have these 5 little bags that are on the back side of your paper that families can check out about different topics that might be of interest, that they can take with them to the river when they're doing their looking around, field guides and things like that.
So just a double check, did you say all our elementary teachers would have gotten something for their grade?
Yeah, so let's put it this way. We packed all 148 bags at my office and we delivered the ones for Fountain and Vermilion to Western Indiana Community Foundation's office. And then we took them to all of our schools. So I know they've been taking them. So Attica teachers should either have them or they're sitting at the Western Indiana Community Foundation off. You don't have them yet? Okay, so I'll let them know. School year's almost over. I know they've been trying to tie into when you have like PLC meetings or something so that we can kind of explain everything that's in there, because it's not just like, here's this bag full of stuff, what is it? And you can see the picture in the top there. So I will reach out to them. I know we only had 3 schools to go to, and they had, I don't know, like maybe 8 or 9. So that's how we were able to distribute our
Well, I was
stuff.
thinking about our summer park program, where this would be timely for the kinds of educational activities that are done in the summer park program.
Yeah, so I think it would be great, like whoever leads that, like the tracks and scat kit, for example, it's a tote. Kids would absolutely, like, they eat it up. There's so many really cool lessons you can do with that, that could tie into anything. So if you're a Parks Department person, like, we can give them a flash drive that has all the lessons on it and all the activities. We kept getting requests from other counties when they started hearing about it. So I think we've already given away somewhere around 60 flash drives with all the content on it. Like, we own the content, so why not share it with as many people as possible? So I'd be happy to share any of our resources with your parks person if you just put them in contact with me. Yeah, and then, oh, that's you? Okay, all right, I would be happy to meet with you to talk about what might work. And on certain things, like, depending, I don't know how long it lasts or whatever, but like, I could come and do programming too, because like I've been through the training with the lady, and then at the Saturday in the Park event where there's lots of different activities that I could, either explain to you so that you could lead them, or like, I could be a special guest that day to lead it or whatever. So just let me know how we can work together on that. Travel Stories GPS. There are 25 stories that have been written from Independence to Clinton. And Greg Green from Kiss Country, whatever, is currently recording all of those. And when you, everyone is geotagged to go across the whole river, but then also on the land. So a person can listen to the story from land, or if they're paddling, you download it before you leave so that you don't need to have GPS, or you don't need to have internet. And then when your GPS goes across that fence, it'll start playing the story automatically. So, and you can also listen to the stories just from the comforts of your own home, but we're encouraging people to actually go. So stories have been written. So we wrote the Warren County stories. Western Indiana Community Foundation got all the stories for Fountain and Vermilion, but like, I know there's one for the Devon, there's one for this park, that has the history of it, and then they, checked backs with the Historical Society or whoever they needed to. So that'll be a cool piece. And then activation of the river, we have kayak kiosks. We do hope that there will be one here, and actually I was just talking to the mayor before about setting up, because it has already been presented in a council meeting. We just need to like pick the spot where it's gonna go and sign the location agreement, so that the company can like get us on the schedule. So I was hoping for midsummer. I think we're probably gonna be pushing late summer. But I'm actually okay with that because you don't really want brand new paddlers like on high water. So I'd rather new paddlers be on low water learning than on high water like getting into trouble. So, and then the hope in 2027, and I think we're pretty far away from this right now, but we did put money in our budget to create a pedal paddle. I say we're far away from it because I need to feel comfortable that it's a safe place to bike. But for example, when I kayaked from the new Asanamon launch to Eugene, just to see how long that would take, I put my bicycle at Eugene. I took my truck back with my kayak. I kayaked the 5.4 miles, and then on the road it was only 3.1 miles bike ride to get back. So that's the way that you only have to have one vehicle instead of a vehicle on each end. So if we have this kiosk where you can rent on one end, and then on the other end, you can rent a bicycle. Now you don't need to have a vehicle that can haul a kayak. You don't have to have your own kayak, and you don't have to have your own way back, because you can paddle yourself this way and pedal yourself back to your car. But again, like, I don't feel comfortable with that. You know, it'd be perfect to go from Attica to Williamsport and then pedal yourself back, but I don't want anybody pedaling on 28. So, you know, or on River Road for that matter. So, you know, just trying to think of where does that make sense to try to add in, and we might end up realizing that it makes sense in like other places, but not here. But we at least put it into the budget. I think that's all the parts, and I've taken an hour of your time. So you guys have been a great audience. I'd be happy to take any more questions, or you know, I'm easy to get a hold of.
I got a quick question. I think it's great that we're doing this, but my question is for the fire departments, is there any type of grant funding for them? I mean, because there's gonna be an increased usage of the Wabash, and I might be wrong here, but I'm pretty sure none of the fire departments are really equipped to do any type of water rescue. I know Lafayette just came down here a couple times.
That's not accurate.
Now, I've been told that the
Attica
Attica
is equipped and they have a boat.
yeah.
They are,
Yeah.
they've done several water rescues over the
Yeah,
years.
I've been directed that Attica is the best one in the 3 counties, and I've reached out to the fire departments because the only money that we have in our budget towards anything with that is we have $3,000 a year that we can use to give those entities to put on like a water safety class. So, however, so I reached out to all 3 departments, and Warren County said Attica's who you need to be working with, like, we defer to Attica. So like, you know, theoretically then there's $1,500 that they can do a class, we'll give them the money. It doesn't cost them $1,500 to do the class. I know that's not very much money, but they could use that for anything that they needed to. But I've been told that, yeah, they have a good boat and training for that. And then depending if there was some sort of additional training, we have a different fund at the foundation, that's specifically kind of for first responder training. And I would say because the river is the border between the 2, I would potentially be able to tap into that.
Good. I just,
Yeah.
I mean, being a former responder, it's,
Yeah.
I mean, in past years, it's always, yeah, we're gonna do this, and then, well, forget about the fire department, forget about the ambulance. And also, you gotta maintain it, so
Yeah.
it's,
The Attica also does ice water training as well. So they do ice
That's
and
great.
fresh, so they're on top of it.
Yeah,
If someone gets in trouble, they have it, huh?
Good for Attica. like that.
That's right.
Yeah, I've been
Really
told,
comforting to hear that.
I've been told across the 3 counties that Atticus is the best out of all the towns, so.
They are.
You hear that a lot
Not to
over
be
here,
biased,
Michelle.
but they are.
Did you hear that on the live? That Attica was best? Just
With,
making sure you heard it.
with water rescue from a fire family.
It's okay, Michelle.
I hope nobody's
I knew what
watching,
you
I
meant.
hope nobody's
I knew
watching.
what you were.
Just a minute.
what'd you say? I didn't hear that.
But yeah, I mean, our goal is to be like sounding board or a resource, you know, in certain cases, like with the amphitheater project, like we think it's gonna make that park way better, but like at the end of the day, does it improve the ability to get into the water? Not so much, but like super happy to write a letter of support for that. So you know, if there's any ways we can help out like that, we're happy to do so. And then like from a signage perspective, I think that's an easy way that we can make an impact for a small cost, and you're trying to direct people toward the water.